My sentiment has always remained that the albums that you grow up on or discover yourself for the first time tends to be the ones that stick with you throughout your life. So I decided to revisit those albums, as if I am not constantly revisiting them on my own. While I'm going to be chatting about these albums and what they mean, I will be also inputting my own interpretations on how I interpreted the songs back then versus how I feel about them now. We're starting off strong with Fall Out Boy's Infinity on High. Most people who know me know that Fall Out Boy's discography has been a staple in my life since I was a young child. 2000s rock was the first genre that I self-discovered, if you will, outside of my family's music tastes, being classic rock and Josh Groban, the legend himself. First album I heard of Fall Out Boys was actually Under the Cork Tree, but as I've aged a little bit, that album has become a little less relevant and Infinity on High has taken its place. But as I've aged, I find that Infinity on High has started to resonate a lot more. Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy and his lyricism is a big thing that really got me into songwriting and poetry and being melodramatic a little bit. I'm going to be taking us through each track of Infinity on High, including some of the deluxe edition. I'm going to try and be brief on these songs, but I have a feeling this is going to be a long video. Strap in, this is a dense album. Without further ado, let's go through the 2007 release, Infinity on High by Fall Out Boy. Track 1, Thriller. I think this song is a fantastic overture into what the themes of the rest of the record are going to be. I'd say a big portion of it is based in fame and the issues that come with fame, as well as, the typical love stories or lack of love stories. I'm not going to say much about the feature that's at the beginning of the song for obvious reasons, but I will say at the time, that was an insane feature to have on a Fall Out Boy album, and I think it's a bit of a foreshadow to what Fall Out Boy ended up becoming. Throughout the recent years especially, there's been a lot of rap collaborations with Fall Out Boy, and some of those songs are some of my favorites, and a lot of people pitch a fit about them, but you can come to your own conclusions as to why. And every day since I heard it, I think about Azealia Banks being featured on a Fall Out Boy song, and I can't believe that's real. I think this song is a bit of a love letter and tribute to fans while also scrutinizing the general public in this rise to fame that Fall Out Boy had in 2006 to 2007. I think the line, "Every dot comes refreshing for a journal update," is such a good representation of what it feels like to have people watching you, whether that's, being peak stardom or just some of those people who are viewing your stories for whatever reason. And maybe that's a little narcissistic of me to say, but the sentiment remains. The line, "All the poets come to life, fix me in 45, feels like it's referring to musicians, whether they're talking about themselves or who they listen to, and the ability that music has to not cure per se, but help in dark times. And I think Fall Out Boy is really self-aware of their fan base and what their music means, as well as having those records be so beloved by fans but scrutinized and almost commercialized by society and fame is a really fascinating dichotomy in this song. Back to The Takeover, The Break's Over. The line, "Wouldn't you rather be a widow than a divorcee," really reminds me of that quote that is, "Out of all the ways you can lose somebody, death is the kindest." There's a sort of completeness to death and understanding that there's no way back and you're not able to contact that person again. While a separation or a divorce still leaves the door open a crack and you can still revisit those people in your lives, whether that's, romantically or platonically, those people that have been pushed out of your lives for whatever reason can still be welcomed back if they're not dead. I love the line, "Your head could be a prison, and these are just conjugal visits." Genius. It seems to add to the idea that there can still be an open line of communication when you lose somebody not in death, whether that's more of a physical communication, if you will, than a verbal transaction. Track 3, "This Ain't a Scene, It's an Arms Race." This is one of the big singles off the record, and frankly, it feels quite straightforward to me. The line, "I'm a leading man and the lies I weave are oh so intricate," feel like a reference to being able to tell your truth through songs, but often being misunderstood. Telling your side of the story, whether it's true or not, and people are going to take those words from you once you put them out into the world anyway and twist them in their own psychological thriller. And whether the things that are said in songs and poem are necessarily true, no audience is ever going to know that, and they can speculate on their end. A reflection of the band not necessarily thinking they're good people, for lack of a better word. They're human themselves, and they make mistakes as well. As the overarching theme of the record, this fits right in with the relationship of fame and the push and the pull. And I have to mention, I love the call and response of the bridge. There's something about it. Track 4. I'm like a lawyer with the way I'm always trying to get you off, me and you. Bear with me here. I have a lot to say about this one. The metaphors in Fall Out Boy's discography sometimes are so vague, can be interpreted in any way, but specifically the second verse is really exemplary of painting a clear picture and being able to visualize something quite literally. I do think there's a line in this song that's a bit of a nod to their previous record, Under the Cork Tree, where he says, "A tree I used to lay beneath." Take that as you will, it's just a fun little tidbit. "I only keep myself this sick in the head because I know how the words get you off." Why would you write that? Like in a good way, why would you write that? I think this line, it just shows the curse of the poet, the curse of the artist. It feels reminiscent of how most of the great artists tend to have issues and struggle with mental health, like Sylvia Plath or Vincent van Gogh, these people who are extremely talented and want to put their life and their experiences into their work, but suffer. It's the idea that not medicating will keep your head clear, for lack of a better word, and you'll be able to put out the best art you can make because you're wallowing in that misery. The best way to make it through is with hearts and wrists intact, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Again, why would you write that? That line specifically feels a bit like the thesis of the song, what we're supposed to take away from it, the message. In my mind, it's the idea of weighing the pros and cons of forcing yourself to suffer for something you love versus letting it go, and what does it cost? One of my favorite lines from this record, period, is "me and you setting in a honeymoon if I woke up next to you." It's calling back to that honeymoon period of a relationship and the lightness and what it feels like and how it's not this dark titular thing. It's about remembering that honeymoon period of a relationship and wishing you could stay there and bring that feeling back rather than be suffering for love and creating art from that. That person, if they were back with you, they could fix you. And while if you singled that line out specifically, it's quite romantic. But in relation to the rest of the song, it feels like a climax moment of recognizing this isn't good for me. That line specifically also paints a picture in my mind of a sunset, and I don't know how to describe what I see in my head when I hear this song, but it is one of my favorites off this album. Track number 5, Hum Hallelujah. Frankly, it's insane to interpolate hallelujah into a song like this, but it's more insane that it works. If you look up the lyrics to this song, it looks like a novel. But the way that Fall Out Boy's instrumentation and Patrick Stump, the vocalist's delivery on these lines, it works somehow. "The road outside my house is paved with good intentions" reminds me of a song that is later in the track list. This song sounds like a love letter to a romantic partner, but in disguise, it's really for fans. Between remaining sane and keeping their sanity while also satiating an audience that is always going to want more from you. It's a nod to how consumption led to them achieving their dreams and being able to mass produce music, but simultaneously understanding how deceiving the idea of fame is. The line, "I love you the same way there's a chapel in a hospital, 1 foot in your bedroom, 1 foot out the door," reminds me of we only want to sing you to sleep in your bedroom speakers. It feels like a nod to fans more so than a ex-romantic partner or current romantic partner. Because there is love there in its own capacity, but sometimes there needs to be distance. Track 6, Golden. This song, if you see me on AirBuds listening to this song on repeat, just know I'm unwell. This song is... Let me pull myself together. When I was first listening to this record as a kid, I'm expecting a rock record, right? I'm not expecting a random piano ballad tossed into the center of it. I don't think I appreciated the gravity of this song until at least in the last 5 to 7 years. But good God, those lyrics, oh my God, like, why am I gonna tear up? I think the second that it really clicked with me what was trying to be said, this song shot easily up to my top 10 Fall Out Boy songs of all time. I might be wrong about this, but to my ear, it sounds like the instrumentation isn't tracked to a metronome. It sounds like the piano is being simply played along with the vocals, which I think gives it this really authentic, gut-wrenching feeling to it. This song is fairly short and quite repetitive lyrically, but I think that's what makes it all the better. It's known in all mediums of art that negative space can sometimes be the most impactful part of the piece. I think this song lyrically is a solid projection of the idea that sometimes the loudest people in the room, the most entertaining people in the room, tend to be struggling the most internally. The chorus, specifically the last one, reads as, "And I saw God cry in the reflection of my enemies, and all the lovers who had no time for me, and all of the mothers who raised their babies to stay away from me, and pray that they don't grow up to be." The chorus alone gives me chills, but especially at that last chorus when it has that outro line of, "and pray they don't grow up to be," is just devastating. I take the chorus as meaning one of two things. I think the narrator is being someone who is loud and entertaining for the sake of other people who might fear them, whether that's God, mothers, lovers, and it's a bit of a reflection of this person thinking that they're a bad person themselves and wallowing in the sewage. Or those characters, enemies, mothers, and lovers, being the people who have the strongest feelings towards the narrator, and specifically the negative feelings towards this person. And again, I feel like it's a reflection thing where the narrator feels like God is showing them their reflection through the people who have the strongest feelings about them. Track 7, Thanks for the Memories, without any vowels. I think about this music video every single day of my life. Every single day of my life. Why was Kim Kardashian there? Why was she there? I mean, it was 2007, granted, but it still feels weird. Since the first time I saw it, and still feels odd. The bridge of this track is easily my favorite part. It is a single, and I fear I overplayed it a bit, or maybe the radio did, and it's not necessarily my favorite song off the record, but this bridge is just... The rhythmic sound of using caracas makes it kind of feel like a merengue or a salsa, which is such a weird contrast to the rest of the song. I think the lyrics of the bridge also depict using fame to get love, whether that's a physical or an emotional connection, to use as a distraction, while simultaneously being critical of their partners because it's not the object of true desire, which in my head would be filling that hole with... filling that emptiness with something meaningful and impactful. And y'all know I'm always a sucker for lines that kind of remind me of cannibalism as a metaphor for love. So the line, "See, he tastes like you, only sweeter," I'm taking it as a metaphor for cannibalism, for love. I know what it means. It's just a little vulgar. Track 8, Don't You Know Who I Think I Am. I used to think the first line of this song was "penny for your thoughts, but $1 for your insides." But it's actually written out as insights. But I think that's the beauty of the lyricism of Fall Out Boy. The double or triple or even quadruple entendres are laced throughout their discography. Again, I think is a love letter to fans, people seeking comfort in music and relating to the lyrics. It's hinted at with the lines, "We only want to sing you to sleep in your bedroom speakers." Whoa. And I don't necessarily think the narrator is speaking solely in their perspective this entire song, indicated with the line, "There's a world outside of my front door that gets off on being down." I think the dichotomy of the first line being a narrator's perspective and the second line being a perspective of a listener. This is probably the most self-deprecating song off this album, which is kind of surprising. While the rest of the tracks feel like a bit of a push and pull at times of placing blame on oneself versus society versus fame versus fan culture versus ex-lovers versus marriage. This song, I think, is quite simplistically about self-sabotage, but I don't think it's necessarily from the perspective of the band or the narrator. I think it's a projection. Track 9, The Afterlife of the Party. "I'm a stitch away from making it and a scar away from falling apart" is a bar. That's a bar and a half. I feel like that line truly encapsulates what it's like to be teetering on the edge of, if I don't get this thing, if I don't succeed, that's it, I'm done. See ya. Putting everything on the line for this one object of your desire and kind of gambling it all. Placing all your chips in the middle of the deck, right? Or, I don't know how gambling works, but putting all your cards on the table. I don't know. Eggs in a basket. I love the lyrics, "Cut it loose, watch you work the room." It's repeated about 4 times as the chorus. There's something oddly intimate about describing an action that is very disconnected from another person. Somebody watching and noticing your every move, it feels intimate, but is still at a disconnect. For me, verse 2 really relates to major distractions in life in the most intense way, those being love, sex, and drugs. Track 10, The Carpal Tunnel of Love. This song reminds me of Under the Cork Tree the most off of this record, specifically the song XO. I do love a spoken word part in a Fall Out Boy song. Specifically the line, "We're the has-beens of husbands, sharpening knives of young wives." First of all, the rhyme scheme of that is insane. It goes back to another one of the major themes of this record, the idea of marriage and maybe the lack of marriage. Track 11, Bang the Dual Drums. This one's gonna be a doozy. In the verses, there's this more creeping guitar riff that feels like somebody testing the waters and whispering the truth of a situation, which leads to quite a resolving melody in the chorus. And I think the chorus is supposed to translate a bit that it's the loudest part of the relationship and the loudest things that happen, not the truthful things. Bitch, the yo-ho-ho-hoing in this song used to make me laugh so hard. But ever since I saw the video of them playing it live with that one Irish shanty as an intro, honestly, gotta hand it to you. Gotta hand it to you on that one. As I said before, I love spoken word and Fall Out Boy songs. This song probably has... I don't want to say my favorite. I have a lot of favorites. This one has a top 5 favorite spoken word portion. The tombstones were waiting. They were half engraved. They knew it was over. Just didn't know the date. Obviously, we're referring to a relationship unless Pete Wentz has murdered someone, and I don't know that. So, track 12, Fame. Wait. Track 12, I don't really know how to say it. Infamy over fame. It's hard to say out loud. This is also in my top 3 off of this record, which I feel like is new. I feel like since I've reached a year in my 20s, I think I've understood this record a lot more, and a lot of the songs in my ranking have shifted quite a bit. There are so many lines on this album that I cannot believe were actually thought of and written out, because they, like, in a good way, because holy shit. I'm all right in bed, but I'm better with a pen. Like, Are you joking? I think that follows the sentiment of artists ultimately want to experience these lived experiences so they can put it into their art. It's kind of the idea of when you're engaging in life experiences and you're kind of thinking ahead to other things. What are you going to make out of it? Life experiences, I think, often to artists feel like currency, and if it's not being used, then what is it worth? This song feels like a contradiction to the self-deprecation and the depressive moments of this record. It feels a bit more manic, but don't get me wrong, it is laced with plenty of self-deprecating double entendres if you're looking hard enough. I'm God's gift, but why would he bless me with such wit without a conscience equipped? Again, rhyme scheme. Stupid, crazy, oh my god. But that line is the perfect sentiment of this middle ground of both being self-deprecating, but also in this manic state of feeling godlike. Track 13, You're Crashing, But You're No Wave. This song is genius to me. This song is based on a true criminal case of a Black Panther named Fred Hampton Jr., who was convicted of arson. This song paints a very clear picture to me. When I listen to this song, I kind of see it in courtroom drawings, like a flip book of sorts. The headline reads, "The man hangs, but the jury doesn't," just it gives me chills every time. I think it's such a good commentary on politics and power and the use of financial power and what it means in communities that are disparaged versus, what they need for the headlines and to stay in power. Essentially commenting on the corrupt justice system. I think this song is extremely underrated, and I think it's because people don't really understand the meaning or do and don't care. The instrumental for the song feels quite cut and dry in the drum beat, but those guitars are quite muddy and blurred together and just seem to be disorienting. And I think it's detrimental to pair the lyrics with the instrumental track like this. It feels like a representation of the two sides of the story, be that the drum battling the guitars and who's right. Along with that choir that appears here and there, it feels like they are the jury. At the line, "The gallery is hushed," there's a kick and a pause. And to me, I see a courtroom holding their breath as the jury re-enters after deliberation. And I believe it is Butch Walker who's featured as the voice of the head jury member delivering the verdict. I don't think they could have done it any other way without it being as impactful. The narrator has this consistent voice throughout the whole song, but I think it's so impactful that they had a secondary voice read the verdict. It's kind of jarring in a way. I'm gonna leave that there because I could make a whole video on the song, but I highly recommend looking into the history of what the song is about. Track 14, I've Got All This Ringing in My Ears and None on My Fingers. This title alone is so tongue-in-cheek. It goes back to the big themes of wedding and marriage and vows, which we will also see in the title of It's Hard to Say I Do When I Don't. Cadence of the last post-chorus, oh my god, the truth hurts worse than anything I could bring myself to do. I'm gonna play it because there's no way to describe that up and down and how well the vocals work with the oppositioning drum beat that is vocal, drum beat, vocal, cymbal, vocal, drum beat. I'm just gonna play it. I do also love the use of horns on this album. It kind of feels like it's foreshadowing the fact that there are essentially symphonies on their next record, Folie à Deux. At the end, there is a round of applause and then a automated voice that says, "Now press repeat." We'll see that again, but I think this is the last track of the standard album, and we will be going into the deluxe songs as well. And I think the deluxe ending makes a lot more sense tying into the beginning. We'll get there. I think also that "Now Press Repeat" in this song works really well with the other lines in this idea of a Groundhog Day relationship, especially with that line, "So many times I could close my eyes." Just like you can do something with your eyes closed or in your sleep. It's a relationship that's on and off and on and off and on and off, that it's just natural. Track 15, GINASFS. which stands for gay is not a synonym for shitty. I literally have no idea why that is the title, but what the hell? Sure, like, I'm not gonna argue. The two pre-choruses without the song change, but it's only one word. The first one says, you almost pick up the phone, and the second one says, I almost pick up the phone. I feel like in the middle of this song, the perspective shifts. For lack of a better word, the blame shifts. And you can see that in the line, which I love this line. Sleep with your old shirts and walk through this house in your shoes. I know it's strange. This line feels a bit haunting and a bit quiet in comparison to what's going on with the song. I think you can take this line literally, of course, and that the narrator, walks through their house wearing their ex-partner's clothes as a reminder of them. But with my thoughts on how I think the perspective shifts in the middle of the song, you can take the first one literally. The second one, I think, has a different meaning. I think the second one is more of a projected meaning, where the person singularly is putting on their own clothes and their own shoes, but when they look in the mirror and look at their clothes, it feels like it's the other person because those objects and those memories are attached to them. Last one, track 16, It's Hard to Say I Do When I Don't. This final track, I think, is the perfect outro to this record, and I wish this was the end of the standard edition, but this is the end of the deluxe edition, if you ignore all of the live versions. I think it wraps up the thematics of this record quite well. From the title, which is clearly speaking about marriage, it's hard to say I do, as well as speaking on things like red carpet blues. I have to read this line off the computer because holy shit, it's long, but this is my favorite line of this song. Oh my god, I gotta take a deep breath. When I said I'd return to you, I meant more like a relapse. Now and again, I think, his and hers, for better or worse, the only rings I want buried with me are the ones around my eyes. I think this is another great line that rides on the line of losing love to save your sanity, but also being self-deprecating and understanding that losing and grieving is depressive, even if they're not dead. Callback. I think the chorus acts like a command to the audience, frankly. And as I said, we'd return to it. It's a bit of a threat the second time when they say, now press repeat at the end of the song. Which if you are listening to the record on repeat, which I highly recommend you do, it takes you back to track 1, which is Thriller. And as they threaten you to now press repeat, it leads right back into that first line of the record. To all the critics who said we couldn't make it, we dedicate this to you. If you repeat this album on a cycle, it feels quite cyclical and a bit tongue-in-cheek to the idea of fame, and the more you listen to it, the more commercial sales, and I think it's a quite genius way to end a record and restart it. Whether or not that was the point, maybe I'm a genius. I just wanted to point out and recap my favorite tracks from this. My top 3 are Golden, Fame, Infamy Over Fame, however you would say it out loud, and I'm Like a Lawyer. Fuck, this song is such a long song title. I'm like a lawyer with the way I'm always trying to get you off, me and you. Ignore that I had to read that off a screen. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed this excursion of nostalgia and revisiting one of my favorite albums. I'll be back with another one of these at some point. As soon as I decide which album I want to revisit. And I think I know which one it's gonna be because I revisited it yesterday and that hurt. We'll see which album I end up revisiting and inevitably reliving PTSD. So, yeah.